Hello, and welcome back to the thearkofe podcast. My name is Noah.
And my name is Gavin.
And we're the Blanchard brothers, back with your 2x2 retro review for the month of March 2022. We took a look at two old favorites, two classics.
Yeah.
It's a Batacular 2x2.
Indeed.
In honor of Matt Reeves' recently released The Batman.
Yes.
Which I believe we were both pretty big fans of. I certainly was.
Yes.
You got to it a little later than I did. I've seen it twice now. Looking forward to the imminent release on HBO Max. Are you going canless for this one?
No, I forgot to put my cans on, and then
you're wondering why you're not hearing me.
Can I hear you? I can hear you, but I can't hear myself.
How's that?
Okay, cans are back on.
How's that?
Levels better.
Coming through, okay?
A lot better.
All right, but yeah, I think we're both pretty big fans of it. We kind of held off talking about it.
Right.
We're not going to do like a full-on review of that, but it'll be part of this discussion. So if you haven't seen The Batman, we'll try and still stay fairly spoiler-free, because at some point, if we can get the brothers Blanchard.
Yes. The cousins Blanchard. You can call them that. It's fine.
Our cousins, the brothers Blanchard. If we can get them on mic, I would love to do a full-on Batacular retrospect. Like, Matt and I have done an episode around the time of BVS, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Where we looked through the franchises. But that was just me and him solo. I would love to get all of us on mic. We go through, we rank them. All the live action.
Yeah.
Maybe we can bring in animated features. Like, we can do our overall ranking. Because I feel like we've now had technically 5. But you could argue, like, I think 5 is inarguable. And you could argue as many as 6 or 7 distinct iterations of the Bat.
The world's greatest detective.
And I think...
The Dark Knight.
I think that's worth delving into
of course.
Exploring. So just a note for everybody, if you're hearing this on the main feed in the month of April, that's because you're not a Patreon subscriber, where you can get the 2x2 retro reviews on time technically for the month that they're recorded in, but also you'll have access to half of a brand new series that we've got coming up, which is going to also overlap with the main feed. We're going to rope you into coming in there, but big exciting summer series, which I think right now we're calling Summers in the ER.
Yes, we are.
Yes. Okay. This was a Gavin brainchild.
Yes.
Where we'll be taking a look at some select episodes of the TV show ER and talking about some of the guest stars who appear.
There's a lot of them.
There's going to be, basically, Gavin's going to be throwing episodes my way. I'll be surprised by the guest star, and then I get to come to him and say, hey, okay, pick a movie from this said guest star, and then we're going to talk about that movie.
I've also, as a neat twist to some of them, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 1 or 2 episodes here and there that have maybe more than one guest star.
Right.
And if you don't find them all,
okay,
I'm going to get to pick the movie of the guest star that I actually chose.
Okay.
But if you do, then you can pick the movie of whoever. Because there's somewhere they're like, oh my God, this person's in it. And then that person's in it. And there's some that'll fake you out because I've just started the 15th season. And
15th and final.
It's pretty wild. And one thing I think we will talk about, and in so much as how interesting it is when that show starts to compete with Grey's Anatomy, because Grey's starts while this is still running, and of course we all know Grey's is still running. It's gone on to be the longest medical drama ever, but I don't necessarily think that means it's the best medical drama, because there's a lot of stuff in ER that was new and groundbreaking, and only towards the latter part of that show do we get like a let's go outside the ER. Let's go do something with their lives. Whereas I feel like the reason possibly why Grey's Anatomy has been so wildly successful is it doesn't really give a shit about like the patients and stuff. At least I don't know. I never watched an episode, but everything I've heard is like, oh, it's all about the doctors. It's, with that.
Right.
Yeah. in so much as I'll make this one little joke, and then we can move on to Batman. The minute I knew, oh, wait a minute, Grey's has already started, is there's an episode where there's a surgeon that comes in, and they talk about him having a problem. Like, he has to, like, you know, go relieve himself in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. To the point that one of the nurses says to Neela, our surgeon, oh yeah, they call him McCreamy. And I'm like, okay, they're definitely poking fun at, like, Grey's, possibly thinking they have the better show. And maybe at the time like, they did.
This ain't gonna last.
Yeah.
We've been here forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're done 3 seasons later.
Yeah. I don't know.
So, yeah, that'll be...
It's going to be a fun series. Check us out, patreon.com/thearkofe. Check us out at the $5 tier for all of that fun summertime goodness and your early access to 2x2 retro reviews. Mm-hmm. All right. So, you know, generally we go one by one and talk through these, but I think given the fact that I'm assuming everybody's way more familiar with these than maybe the average movie that we do on
Hopefully
these.
So.
I think we can kind of rope them into one giant discussion and, just talk about how long had it been since you'd seen 89 start to finish?
5-6 years, maybe.
About the same for me.
I always go to Returns before I go back to
Same here. I've watched Returns way more recently. I prefer it, but I was also glad that you were like, no, let's go back to the OG.
Well, here's an interesting point I wanted to maybe we could talk about. I wanted to get into. It's looking at each of these. We don't have to. I mean, again, we can compare it to the Batman because I think it's an interesting look at like what it is. But I like the idea of where we meet Batman in every movie, how that plays out completely differently in Batman Begins and Batman 89, versus where we find Batman in The Batman. So going from there, do you need an origin for Batman now? Like I can understand in Batman Begins you had not had an origin, quote unquote, and since Batman 89. And possibly one of the things people remember about that is, oh, so you're telling me the Joker is the one who actually made him Batman? There's that thing, which I'm sure all the purists, Kevin Smith and all these
the
other
villain
people
creates him. He creates his own villain.
Right. So,
which kind of happens in Batman Begins as well.
How do you figure?
He's trained by
Alan
Ducard, Ra's al Ghul,
right,
who makes him Batman in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then
he has to,
yeah,
that makes sense. So,
and then he in turn creates his own villain by not becoming a part of the League of Shadows,
right?
Because if he had, they would have been allies.
Saying
it's the same thing. There's just no vat of chemicals involved.
Exactly. Okay.
The chemicals are in the water supply. It's more realistic that way.
Right. So, if you can remember, you're watching this, trying to watch 89 now in a adult setting.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it would have been grounded in any sort of realism in its day? Or are we still operating in like a wild fantasy world?
Well, I've listened to the aforementioned Kevin Smith talk for hours about the distinction of like, at the time, this was like, oh, somebody's taking it seriously because you're coming off the back of the Adam West, like that's what people think of as Batman at that point. And except for comic book readers who had read Dark Knight Returns, Year One, etc., and we're like, no, this is what Batman is now.
Right.
Like people don't know, they don't understand. So I can see that a bit at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also going back to it now, it's like that is a phase, and yes, Schumacher comes in and like it's taking kind of the core of the Burton aesthetic and just like blowing it out in a crazy different direction. But that, though, to me, those 4 movies that's one era of the Bat.
Mm-hmm.
Even though people want to put a dividing line between the Burtons and the Schumachers, but it's like he's not trying to like all of a sudden undo the previous two movies. He's just kind of upping his aesthetic, right. But it's like, boom, we're into this.
Yeah, because he's already established in both those Schumacher ones. There is no reference point of like, Thomas and Martha's murder. Like you see flashbacks of like different times, but you don't see the actual event happen. In the way that like it's mirrored in the opening of Batman '89, and we do get the flashback sequence of it actually happening, and all that. And one thing we can get into in a minute when we're talking about Batman Begins is if we're talking about those four, the '89 and then the '90s output, we can do my favorite thing I like to do, which is to talk about when Batman Begins comes out, what that does, what that kicks off, and how that paradigm shift in the world, like affected what we see. And now, having had maybe a slightly more of a paradigm shift, how that relates to the Batman that we have now in this century, this decade,
Yes.
So,
where to begin?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing I like about Batman Begins, is that I get to see this guy go from child who loses everything, adult man who is fed up with everything, and how that journey turns into like him coming back to the city that he loves. I love the love of the city is a huge thing down the line.
My city.
Yeah. You don't get that
My
from
city needs me.
Exactly. You don't get that a lot in like any of the stuff from the 90s. There's nothing about like, oh, I love Gotham so much I have to do this. There's no tortured soul in there. It's just like, this guy just does this. So, like, he is just Batman. You know what I mean?
Few things there. One area you didn't mention, which going back to, I was like, oh, I forget there is like a solid little section there, is like young, douchey Bruce Wayne, like fresh out of flunking out of college Bruce Wayne,
right,
kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when he comes back and like he's gonna murder Joe Chill, shout out to Richard Brake, who I totally forgot was it was in Batman Begins. But yeah, when he comes back and like he has it, just going back to this now, a few weeks removed from the Batman, where of course there was a certain amount of reaction like, oh yeah, he's so emo, and most people were like, oh, he's so emo, I love it. Which I love that it's turned now from like that used to be a dirty word, but now it's like, no, people are into it. But I'm like, but yeah, people were like, oh yeah, I kind of like that, like Pattinson's version is like he's kind of a naive, like petulant, like child in some aspects. And I'm like, yeah, and Bale gets to like play that little shade too. You just forget about that little section of Batman Begins. And yeah, like you're saying, you also get the most time you ever spend with any childhood version of him and actually establishing any kind of relationship with the parents. I think it is kind of the definitive, or like it's the most well done origin story. Now you can talk about the actual, like the murder of the parents, like what version of it is the most effective across all the movies. And I might argue that the Tim Burton ultra stylized, if you remove the fact that it's the Joker and like in the context of when we're seeing that, it's a reveal that like, oh shit, the Joker killed my parents.
Well, and see, you can revisit that now and be like, that's just him. He's so far removed from that memory that because he knows who Jack Napier is, he's imprinting like, what if it was a young?
It could have been anybody.
It could have been, but in his mind's eye, it's like.
But the movie clearly wants
it. Wants you to. Yeah, you'd have to make a big leap on your own interpretation, but that's just what happens when you dance with the devil in the pale moonlight. No, it's just it's gonna happen.
Never rub another man's rhubarb. Okay.
This town needs an enema.
Yeah.
Let's get into that first, though.
Yes.
Do you think Batman '89 has any staying power if anyone else is the Joker? Because Jack is the only reason I remember Batman '89. Yes, Michael Keaton's great. I know what he was leading up to this. He was a kind of a comedy guy, Johnny Dangerously, Night Shift, all that. Beetlejuice is after this.
I thought Beetlejuice was before.
Maybe they're the same year. I thought Beetlejuice
was like 88.
Maybe it was. Let me look.
Call me crazy.
Let me see.
I thought that was part of the whole thing, is they were like, you want Beetlejuice to be Batman?
Maybe you're right. I I didn't see. Oh, 88. Yeah. Okay. So the year before this. So, yeah. All right. So you got Beetlejuice's Batman, and then you've got take your pick of whoever being the Joker, whatever you want to call it, Jack Nicholson. He's got tons of iconic characters. Jake, if you want to call him that. But do you think it has that? Obviously, Nicholson is the star of the movie. Like, he's got first
He's
bill.
the above the title guy.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Jack Nicholson in Batman, not
right.
is Batman.
Exactly.
In Batman.
And it's like that's one of those shifts that you're like, you don't see that happening, to the point that
you don't really, like, I can't think of the last time they really did that.
Right.
Where it was like, quote unquote, the leading guy is kind of like a little bit unproven as a leading man, and you get like a powerhouse to be the villain. Like, I can't really think of the last time that happened.
Well,
ever.
Yeah.
In the superhero genre, or just like movies at large, I guess.
Right.
I mean, you have instances of like people on the come up then working with like legendary older actors. That's kind of a trend, but that's not really what we're talking about here.
No.
Okay, here's the other element. I agree with you 100%. Nobody else, it would not have the staying power if you remove that from the equation. And, I mean, a lot of other elements. The Anton First Batmobile, the whole aesthetic, the score, the Danny Elfman music, like, a lot of it is working in consort with each other. What are you looking at?
I'm looking at what Bale had done up until this point, to where people would know him from going into Batman Begins, besides The Machinist.
He was around, and I feel like American Psycho had enough of a life where people... I feel like going into Batman Begins, it was people in the know, like movie heads, were super amped that he was about to be Batman. But yes, I think your larger movie-going public probably didn't really have much of an association with this guy. So it probably was more of a Keaton thing to your average moviegoer, honestly. Right. Not in as much as like, oh, this is kind of an off-the-wall choice, more of like a, oh, there's a new Batman movie, and it's like, it doesn't really matter who Batman is, I'll give this thing a shot. And I think it had been enough time removed from the Schumacher of it all. And Clooney being your last guy, where it's like, that's a total product of like, that was a of the moment casting. Like, this is the dude, like, this seems like what he should be doing in his career. And as a result of what happens with that movie, you see him make a very strategic decision to like never really ever do anything like that again.
Which I think he's primed for. I believe if he came back and just went balls to the wall with some established property already. But yeah, I mean, you're talking. That's what I'm thinking, is because like yes, Beetlejuice is a big hit, and I forget that comes out, and that's kind of like, okay, but it's still a comedy. Like, you haven't seen every one of these. It feels like with the person that they're making Batman, it's a choice that you could look at and be like, huh? But when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, of course that works. Like, there's a reason casting people are casting people. You know what I mean? Like, they know what they're going to get. But to me, I remember Christian Bale younger, obviously American Psycho, but I'm trying to think of it. I don't really think of it.
The Machinist was right before this.
Right.
That was definitely a thing for me. I'm trying to, because I was on the train of like, oh, hell yeah, Christian Bale's going to be in this. I also really remember being excited by we knew Cillian Murphy was going to be in it.
Yeah, that's who I got a Batman Begins for, because I'm like, yeah.
Well, and he almost was Batman, of course.
Right.
You can go look at his screen test. And Josh Hartnett's as well. But yeah. Actually, I don't know if there is a Hartnett screen test. But he was definitely, those were the three that it was down to. And Bale seems like kind of the odd man out of that bunch, which I guess is honestly why he rises to the crop.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
The other two are more tall, lanky, a little bit more youthful. Mm-hmm. But Bale, of course, you can style him to look any number of ages.
And it works.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He ages through this pretty convincingly, I feel like. But yeah, going back to your point of the Joker, I'm like, yes, 100% Nicholson steals the movie. He is what is still... he has all the best lines. He's everything you remember about it. And, I mean, this is part of why, like, Keaton eventually doesn't want to do the third one. Because he's like, the villain's just like, he's like, I'm just there. Like, there's not, they get to do all the fun shit, and I'm just in this rubber suit for, like, 8-hour days. Like, fuck this, man. Yeah. No, I don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And so he bails. Also, because Tim Burton is out at that point.
Right. I do think it's interesting, though, that Keaton in 89 has one of the only instances where, like, the love interest, like, beside, I mean, yes, you have it Batman Begins, whatever, but, like, even throughout, like, Michelle Pfeiffer doesn't figure it out until at the very end, right before she dies, right?
Kind of at the party before the climax.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting because, like, having seen the Batman, and I'm thinking in certain scenes, I'm like, yo, her face is just out there. Like, the cops see her face. Like, they know who she is.
Right.
Did you not maybe want to hide this? Especially when they go back to the signal and she's got somebody there, you know? And I'm like, she doesn't give a shit about people knowing who she is.
Yeah.
But they go to such great lengths, and that's one of the things I did appreciate about the Christian Bale Batman is that there is no, Gordon doesn't find out who he is until the very end of that trilogy, quote unquote.
Yes.
And do we ever realize in the 60s Batman that, like, Commissioner Gordon knows it's Bruce Wayne? Like, it's like a wink and a nod that, like, there's so many times, I remember episodes where it's like, well, you know, I would think this. And
I feel like they play around with that a lot, right. But I don't think that ever becomes a thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I like the idea that, like,
at least we're still, again, one of my favorite things about the show is it's like, there is no bat signal. He just fucking calls him up and he's like, hey, yo, Riddler's in town. Can you come over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
I have the box set sitting right behind me. I've been debating digging it out.
That would be a dope one to go back and I just so many colors, just the colors of all.
Dude,
and I think
the remastered Blu-rays look incredible.
Oh, I'm
sure. It is such a fun show to
and I'm sure, like, that being in everyone's mind, when you get the dark, gray, grim backdrop of 89's Batman, you're like, oh shit, what am I doing here?
And then as a result of that, like, when you have the Joker in all his glory and everything, it pops a lot more. And of course, I will always have a soft spot for this movie in particular, and Returns continues it, but he establishes what then leads into the animated series. I mean, the animated series does not exist without the 89. It doesn't exist without 89 and Returns, aesthetically speaking. Mm-hmm. And the whole, like, retro futurism where it's like we're kind of in the 40s, but everything's super badass. Right. And, like, you know, you got the German expressionism in there a little bit, but the cars are still kind of old and, like, beat up. And yeah, aesthetically, that's why I'm like, I feel like it is the strongest until we get to the Batman. I feel like the Batman is the most, like, to me, fully realized aesthetic version of Gotham.
Do we know
that I've seen in anything.
Did they shoot the same city as, like, but they shot Chicago as Gotham, right?
In Batman Begins, yes.
Right. But with the Batman, where did they shoot?
All over the place. And that was kind of the point, was to...
Yeah, it never felt like any other Gotham I'd ever seen.
They shot some in London. Right. They shot wherever it made sense for, like, what they were trying to convey, essentially. Yeah. And...
Do you think... Well, the next big question, do you think we need, like, now, like, in 1989...
Right.
Or maybe let's just say since then.
Because we are in 1989.
Right. Yes.
What was the question? Can you repeat the question?
Do you feel that you need the origin story at all now? Because
presently or in 89, I'm so confused with what you're saying.
Both. Like, in 89, like, do you feel like by the time we obviously in 89 you have to do some kind, I don't want to say retconning, but you're giving the world an entire new vision.
I feel like to a certain extent you never needed it. Right. Because I feel like, and it's part of why the movie opens the way it does, because it's almost a fake out. And I always remember that, because every time I would rewatch it as a kid, I always was like, oh, that's little Bruce in the opening or whatever. And, you know, it never even played for me on the level that it should as like an adult movie watcher, where it's like, yeah, he's playing with your expectations. And it's like, no, Batman's here. He's fully fleshed out already. This isn't an origin story.
Right.
And I feel like you could do that at the time because it's weird. He's so ever present, like as a character,
right?
That in the same way, I feel like, well, ask anybody, how'd Peter Parker become Spider-Man? Well, he was bitten by a radioactive spider, and then his Uncle Ben was killed by Robert, and he didn't prevent it, and he could have. And yeah, great power comes great responsibility. Like, people who've never read that in text and had never seen a movie up until the Sam Raimi movie came out,
right,
could probably tell you that,
right?
In the same way that I feel like everybody knows, oh, his parents were killed in, you know, probably knew, oh, in an alley. Maybe they know Crime Alley, maybe they don't, but you know the basic setup.
Right.
So I think they didn't need to do it. And then when it feigns at the opening of like, oh, we're not actually doing it, you almost aren't expecting him to then really go back to the flashback well.
Right.
And then also at the same time be revealing, ooh, huge twist, we're saying the Joker did it. Which is so wild to see now, because it's a decision that, like, I'm like, if they did that in one of these current ones,
right,
people would be furious.
Exactly.
They would be like, that's ridiculous. Like, you can't, no, the Joker should be mysterious and like all this other, because they have the Heath Ledger thing in their brain. Like, if you did it now, people would not accept it.
Right.
And again, I think it's because shit was just so unproven at the time. They're essentially just throwing shit at a wall. And I feel like Jack Nicholson was the guarantor of like, hey, we'll do okay if we got Jack just going hog wild. Like, let him cook.
Is there a reason why they didn't let Billy D. Williams be Two-Face in the 90s? Because they set him up as Harvey Dent in 89.
There's some story behind it, I feel like. But he gets like contractually shafted for some bullshit reason. Then they end up making him white. It's Tommy Lee Jones.
Because I feel like that's the way you go. Like, I mean, part of me wants to be like, give me somebody I've never seen on camera before. Give me a villain I've never seen on camera at all. Moving forward.
That's what, to be fair, I remember being so exciting when we were getting the first details of Batman Begins.
Right.
When they announced, oh, it's going to be Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul. Like, what?
I didn't know who Ra's al Ghul was. I was like, huh?
I mean, I had to be reminded, like, oh yeah, the dude who dresses in like the emerald green and has the crazy facial hair.
Right.
But I didn't even remember the whole Talia and like all of that stuff. So, but I just remember thinking like, oh, this is cool. They're doing something different. And then I remember hearing like, oh, and Zaz, and I remember thinking like, oh, who's that? I've never heard of him before. And it was like, oh, he's in the comics that you haven't been reading for the last like 20 years. Well, at that point, 10 years. I don't know.
Yeah, because there's a lot of... That's the one thing I will say about Nolan is like, for the direction they took to like know he was building a foundation, I feel like it plays very well, to the point that you were talking about the costume and like how it doesn't do him any justice, like that first outfit. But when you get to the latter ones, you're like, okay, like it's
well,
a little bit
and
more
granted,
iconic.
I haven't seen those in a bit, but yeah, going back to this, I was just like, he doesn't look badass as Batman.
Right.
He doesn't look cool in this outfit at any point in this movie.
But it's practical.
The face is not doing him any favors. I don't like how it's molded to him. It makes his like whole mouth section look very odd. The whole neck thing, which as you mentioned becomes a thing in Dark Knight The Dark Knight, excuse me, where he wants to be able to turn his head. It gets a little more sleek and aerodynamic looking. But to that point, for me, give me the Batman and that suit design all day long. I look forward to an upgraded version of it in the sequel, but I love the look of that and the genius decision to just let him have so much more of his face than any other of these actors have had, shy of Adam West.
Yeah.
Design-wise, it is the closest to the Adam West Batman cowl.
Right. Yeah.
It's got the stubbier ears, more top half of the face, and way more jawline and open exposure on the sides. And he's even got the little like collar kind of.
Yeah, that was the thing I dug the most was like the little.
I think he looks, as again, going back to Batman Begins here, and then just thinking back to the I'm like, every single time you see him in the Batman, I'm like, it just looks so fucking cool, dude. Yeah. He just,
or if you're in that universe, you're like, this motherfucker is scary.
Yeah.
Like the scenes where, like the opener, when he's just like quietly, you just hear him walking. He's not
the
like,
footsteps, man.
He's
love
not.
It.
He hasn't. And that's what I was getting at when I was asking you about, do we need the origin story? Because I appreciate the origin in Batman Begins, but I love that we don't really know how long he's been Batman in 89. He doesn't have a signal, obviously.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
But I love that this is 2 years into the Gotham project, so to speak, in the Batman. Yes. And they already have a signal. And as, you know, spoilers, he's already done some stuff.
He's already taken down the Joker, apparently.
Or just John Doe at this time, not the Joker yet.
Did you watch the deleted scene?
I did.
Yeah, so are you thinking he put the makeup on once he got to prison?
I'm thinking whatever they did, he had to do to bring him in is what fucked his whole face and head up. And he's recovering from that.
I mean, Matt Reeves has said it's supposed to be like a degenerative disease, like an actual thing that people have.
Huh.
So, I don't know. And I also don't know how much they're going to explore it in the sequel. But you didn't watch the deleted scene?
I did, yeah. We had the conversation with him, yeah. No, and I don't want it, though. I want him to be behind bars with the Riddler, and I want somebody brand new.
See, I know some people were like, oh man, they got to tease the Joker again. Like, what the hell? Like, why do we have to spend time on this? And I didn't take it that way at all. I thought it was so cool, the idea of like, oh, he already took down this version of Batman. He already took down the Joker once. We know the Joker will inevitably break out. But I took it more as like, you're just setting that on the back burner for like 3, potentially.
Yeah.
Because they have the potential here to do something that Nolan was never able to fully execute on. Because we know that Heath was always meant to be a part of the third in the trilogy.
Right.
And then basically the entire movie gets reworked after he dies. So potentially here, he can actually tell this long overarching story where it's like, yeah, we set up villains here, but we have a payoff of them down the road.
Because this kind of, the Batman to me follows more of the, what would you say book-wise? Is it the long...
It's pulling a lot from Long Halloween, which to be fair, so does Batman Begins in some aspects.
And Year One.
Yeah. And Year One's a lot. One that I've heard referenced a lot recently is Batman Ego, which I have not read, which is like it's basically, it's like a chamber piece, I guess. Batman and Bruce are kind of like split into 2 separate entities, and they're having it out with each other over who is, because obviously that's a huge theme of the new one, which is like part of what I loved about it. Like 90% more Batman than most Batman movies.
Yes.
Like a lot of Batman.
Yeah.
Like not very much Bruce Wayne. And I saw some people that were like, oh yeah, well he's kind of unproven in the Bruce Wayne factor. I'm like, I don't disagree with that, but I like that we're actually, it's a way to reverse it where it's like, when he shows up in Batman Begins, it's like he's kind of already the man at doing the douchey rich guy thing.
Oh yeah, he's got
of his cover story, and that is one of my favorite aspects of the Christian Bale, Bruce Wayne, Batman dynamic. Mm-hmm. As many issues I may have with the voice, as like I don't think he's like particularly badass in any moments in the suit. Like suit doesn't do him any favors and everything, but the moments with him as Bruce Wayne, like being charismatic or being douchey or like subtly intimidating people, are incredible because Christian Bale's the fucking man. He's a great fucking actor, and you see the trajectory of Patrick Bateman to Bruce Wayne. You see the instinct of like, this is why I would cast this guy, because he can do this, and I kind of trust him to be able to do the other side of this thing too. So another thing with his Batman that I noticed this time through, a lot more fun than I remembered.
Oh yeah,
a lot more quippy. Mm-hmm. Like moments where he like bursts through a door and like when he blows a hole through the prison when he's escaping at one point, and he's just like, "Excuse me," to 2 inmates who are just sitting there. Or moments with the kid who like reoccurs, little Joffrey from Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
but where he like gives him the tool and shit, which is stuff that like I don't know. I feel like most people would be like, would kind of forget that, like, oh, that's in there. Mm-hmm. Because in the same way that we sit there and we look at 89 and it's like, oh yeah, you thought of this as like gritty at the time, but now it plays more like the more 66 fun, Batman, more fun and campy. It's like you think of Nolan's as, oh, the grounded, serious,
right,
like heavy gravitas Batman. It's like, no, it very much is an in-between cusp superhero movie. Because think about what we're coming in the wake of. What we've gotten up to this point: Spider-Man 2, okay, X2, which I feel like are
at its time was considered like the best superhero movie
for quite a while.
Yeah,
yes,
the bar to beat.
And so this is like, we didn't talk about it in these terms at the time because it wasn't this Marvel versus DC.
Right.
It was all just like, it's all different studios. It's not, we're not comparing them property wise. It's just, these are comic book movies right now.
Right.
We didn't have the lines drawn in the sand. But it has more in common with that era of superhero movies.
Right.
Than it does with the one that it ultimately ends up inspiring for a bit with Dark Knight.
Right.
Because that's the other thing, and I basically was waiting until we recorded this to I'm going to go back and rewatch Dark Knight for the 40th, 50th time, whatever. Yeah. And I'm interested to see, because in some ways, I kind of like this one that exists more in this. It's heightened. It's grounded and it's taking it seriously, but it's still having some fun. And it takes a while till you get to a joke. I think I counted, and it's 42 minutes in or something. But as soon as he shows back up on the tarmac after he blows up Ra's al Ghul's place, saves Liam Neeson, and shows up on the tarmac, and Alfred gets off, and they start having banter. I remember in the theater and rewatching it this time where I was just like, fucking Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Dude, just nobody will ever top him. And it's why I don't need, I liked Andy Serkis in the new one.
I appreciate him
I like
a lot.
Jeremy Irons in the Batfleck flicks. But I don't need a deep Bruce Alfred relationship, because the one across this series, the Bale series, the Bale Kane interactions are just so strong. I'm like, you don't even really need to try and touch it. It needs to be a different dynamic.
Right.
Which I think the circus one will be when he's not confined to a hospital bed.
Essentially, yeah.
Riddler just blew him up.
Yeah. And well, talking about that, I think it's interesting talking about the paradigm shift. So all those that you're talking about, including Batman Begins, are all post 9/11. They're coming at a time where we need superhero movies. We need them. Mm-hmm. We don't know we do, but we need them. Very famously, they had to change the whole Spider-Man traps a helicopter between the Twin Towers.
Right.
A lot of that stuff. So by the time that you get to The Dark Knight, we've had enough time to sit with ourselves and think about what we did in the wake of needing all these superhero movies. We went into one country, then we went into another, then we got dragged down, and we lost the goal, eye on the prize. There were no weapons of mass destruction, blah, blah, blah. So by the time that The Dark Knight comes along, you're dealing, that movie, is about the effects of terrorism and what it means to have these things happen in a real world setting. And there are some comedic bits in it.
I was going to say, if you want to get into that, Batman Begins, a huge portion of this version of the character and this origin point hinges on a morality question, which is essentially, you guys both have the same goal. You want to fight injustice.
Mm-hmm.
Henry Ducard, or Ra's al Ghul, Liam Neeson, Taken, whatever.
One of the first times he's been a big bad guy. Maybe some other ones, but this is the first one I remember him being a bad guy.
Yeah, and going back to this again, kills it.
Yeah.
And it worked, really did work in the theater at the time, because I remember, based on all the trailers, I was like, oh, it's Kim Watanabe. Obviously. Mm-hmm. He's going to be the big bad.
Yeah.
And then he's dead within the first 40 minutes, and you're like, oh shit, okay. And then I was like, I know Scarecrow's in this, but I don't know how this is
right.
going to connect. And also rewatching it this time, I was like, oh, everything is very Christopher Nolan-y Swiss watch. Like everything
moves. Everything is,
and everything connects. It's like, okay, why is the vaporizer or whatever that they need that's stolen going around? Well, it's because once Rutger Hauer took the company public, he started investing in all these military operations and everything. Mm-hmm. So that's why, Wayne R&D has all of the shit that is now like being used against them, but is also the basis for like, they have these military contracts, so here's all this unused shit that never went into production. That is his practical version of this is how I became Batman. Mm-hmm. And it's like it all like there's no superfluous shit. Everything folds back into itself, which I feel like is a very Christopher Nolan
to the point that like you have Katie Holmes' boss like, no, things are working differently. Wait, this is, and like he gets murdered trying to investigate what happens, and to her to be like, hey, I got to start looking for my boss. He's probably in the bottom river. What does that set up? Sets up fucking Harvey Dent in the next movie, because this guy died. And when you watch it, you're like, why am I seeing this?
New romantic interest, and it's like, oh yeah, this is kind of her thing.
Look what happened in your quest to make your city great. The DA gets killed.
Well, and she's the one who puts him onto Falcone in the first place,
right?
Which in turn is what puts him on to what's actually going on with the Scarecrow, what's actually going on with the League of Shadows, and it all ropes back into itself.
Right.
And yeah.
Because see, I think of it as like,
as opposed to, because I don't want to ignore it. I feel like we're favoring Begins a little bit. As opposed to 89, which, if you step back and look at the plot of this movie, Vicky Vale and Batman spend one night together. Vicky Vale and Bruce Wayne spend one night together, and presumably are like madly in love afterwards.
Yes.
Okay. Within a very quick span of time, even though he's like, yeah, I got to go out of town on business for a few days. And then she stalks him, is slowly discovering his origin story.
Right.
Essentially. Because he's more like a recluse in this one. Like nobody knows anything. It's like the Wayne murder was forgotten, which is kind of fucking weird.
Right.
There's also the weird thing of like,
he has a party at his house.
We don't know how long he's been doing this, but like he's still kind of a legend as far as the underworld is concerned, and like Gordon's never had any real interaction with him
till the scene that makes the Joker. He's like, keep a lid on it until we.
That's why, like, when you get to Begins, in the same way that like the Batman delivered on a lot of things, where I was like, I've always wanted to see this in a Batman movie. Mm-hmm. It's the things I've always wanted now that we've had so many iterations. At the time Batman Begins came out, I remember thinking like, I love that like he's working with Jim Gordon.
Yeah.
Like they're finally doing it, because you have 4 movies prior where Jim Gordon is just like nothing like the version we know from the animated series.
Right.
Nothing like the version we know if you've read any of the comic books at all.
And that's probably my favorite thing about year one is the Jim Gordon part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. One of the best of the animated DC movies as well. Mm-hmm. With Cranston as Jim Gordon and Ben McKenzie as Batman. Huge recommend. It's on HBO Max. As are all of these, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if 89 is right now. It may be Hulu specifically.
I think it is on Hulu. 89
I think Hulu. I think Hulu has the 80s and 90s output, and then HBO has they rotate though, because of course Warner Brothers is mostly on HBO Max.
Well, and to bring up your point of like animation, one of the things I really hope that they could very well do in the sequel. We know that this is 2 years in, but one of my favorite sequences is his first attempt as Batman when he's in the Mask of the Phantasm, where he's on the highway stopping the truckers from being robbed. And he's like, they're not afraid of me. Like, I have to do something to make them afraid of me. I have to look afraid. Because he's literally just in like a balaclava and like
which
a utility
you get
thing.
a little bit of in Batman Begins, which I loved.
Right.
A little nod to. I always was like, oh, he saw Phantasm.
Exactly.
Or maybe David Goyer did. But
yeah. You know. But like, I've always wanted to, and I got a little bit of that in Batman Begins, but I would love to see his actual first night as Batman through Robert Pattinson. Like, I would love to see what that's like. Is it the cape and the cowl always, or is it just more of like a protective helmet that like covers his eyes?
I feel like it's his lo-fi, when you see him scouting out areas and when he's doing his like, I'm incognito as a homeless person.
I called it his Mr. Robot.
Well, I call it his good time.
Yeah, good time.
Honestly,
yeah.
He just looks like, he just walked out of a bank robbery and he's trying not to get recognized.
Right.
Oh my God. I cannot wait to rewatch it on HBO.
Yeah.
I am so excited. To that point, look, again, we're jumping all over the place, but I love Gary Oldman and their interactions in these, but dude, Jeffrey Wright in the new one, man,
it was so worth it.
He might be my favorite.
It was so worth it to know that, like, when we watched No Time to Die, and it was the end of an era thing, I was like, God damn it! But in the back of my mind, I was like, you know what? He is Jim Gordon, though. Like, he's Jim Gordon. It's gonna be okay.
Dude, still feel like we never really got to explore J.K. Simmons. Because he's in those, but not really.
No, he's in for like 2 seconds.
For like very brief periods of time. And of course, I mean, I love the movie we got might be my favorite live action Batman movie ever. I'm referring to The Batman.
Mm-hmm.
But just remember, originally, that was supposed to be Batflick.
Yeah.
So imagine old grizzled Dark Knight Returns style Batflick in a similar plot to that. Keep most of the elements the same.
Yeah, no, and
that'd be interesting.
Well, see, here's my thing. This is a thing I said. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion. The Batman, this could just be year 2, and like Batman versus Superman and Justice League, that's year 52. It could be. It isn't, but it fits in so much that the Joker fits as its own standalone thing in the DC universe, because you do have Martha and Thomas in there. They do get killed. This, if you wanted to, could fit into those. It's not. It's its own thing completely, and I appreciate it, and I want this moving forward. I don't need another Batman. I don't need there to be any more Batflick anymore.
I was genuinely terrified right up until credits rolled that the Batman, Matt Reeves' The Batman, which up until that point I had loved even more than I could have possibly imagined, and I was clenching because I was like, do not connect this to Todd Phillips' Joker.
Right.
Do not do it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, if there is some last minute thing where you're going to tell me that was a prequel, we're in the same universe as that movie, I will dock this 2 points immediately. I will call bullshit. And I'm so glad that they didn't, because I'm so glad that for me, it was refreshing, dude, in a sea of like all the Marvel interconnectivity, whatever DC is doing between, like, I love Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, kind of don't see how any of it is going to have any effect on like what they're doing as a whole with Aquaman or Wonder Woman or Flash, which we may eventually, possibly sometime get eventually.
But Keaton's coming back for that, right?
Keaton's supposed to be in. Yeah, but I think it got delayed. Like it's 2023 again or whatever. But I was just so happy that, like, no, this is its own thing. It's its own universe. He's got his own sandbox to play in.
Oh, yeah.
It's not beholden to tying into anything.
Well, it's the same way when they did the cartoon, The Batman. Like, it's its own, like, it doesn't carry, I don't think it carries any voice actors over from the previous Batman and Robin Adventures or whatever it is. And to that point, that's the one thing that I hope we can keep moving forward, is that there's no sidekick.
I see.
Because here's the thing. I went back and I did all the seasons of Teen Titans.
Okay.
And I appreciate Sir Jorah being Bruce Wayne in that show.
You're talking about the live action Teen Titans.
Yes.
Yes.
I appreciate him being Bruce Wayne.
It's just called Titans, right?
Or maybe just Titans, maybe. Yeah, I think that's right. And
also available on HBO.
Yes.
Huge plug for HBO.
I watched that when I was when I got sick with what I thought was COVID, but wasn't COVID. Just ran through all of it. And it was great. And I just, I don't want a kid sidekick. I don't want another thing. I just want I want him by himself like he has been. Not saying that JGL wasn't great as like a you can help me out as a cop thing in Dark Knight Rises, but I like it just being him, world's greatest detective. And that's what I loved about the Batman more. It's like there's never been more detective work than that. You get a little bit of it in 89 where he's like, the police are going about it all wrong. It's these 3 chemicals that are put together. Put a notice out that you can't mix these 3. This will stop happening. That's the only little glimmer you get of him being a detective. The rest of it.
He seems like he's been doing this for forever in that movie. Mm-hmm. He has all the tech. He has the Batwing. He has all this shit. And it's just like, but nobody but everybody seems like they're just meeting him for the first time. Like you're telling me he's never had an interaction with Commissioner Gordon in all this time prior.
Right.
He's never run into the cops. I don't know. And then Alfred, who again, going into Batman Begins, I was like, nobody will ever replace Michael Gough. Like, he's iconic. And then within 5 minutes, I was like, I love you, Michael Caine. Be my grandfather, please. Like, Alfred is terrible in 89 Batman.
Yes.
He fucks him over at every turn.
Every single goddamn turn.
He's like, I got to go out of town on business for a few days. Okay, Alfred, I'll see you when you guys get back. We're not going anywhere, dear. I'm like, but dude, fucking, like, are you kidding me? Like,
he says it to him in returns. Yeah, Alfred, who let Vicky Vale into the Batcave? Yeah. Like, hello?
Yeah.
See, and that's the only thing about it that, like, I think...
You know the only thing this Alfred's good for? Getting him a nice, refreshing Diet Coke.
Yes.
Do you remember that trailer?
Oh, God, yes.
You see, earlier when you were saying, would this movie exist without Nicholson? To me,
it wouldn't exist
Nicholson,
without product placement.
But it also Diet Coke, because I remember so vividly that promo. Yes, exactly.
With the Diet Coke can that had the bat wings that kind of came out and then draped around. Yes, I remember that, and then the Warner Brothers catalog on the VHS with Bugs Bunny.
Yeah,
and but yeah, to your point, like, what was I gonna say about
Sorry,
Alfred?
I got kind of lost.
No. Yeah, Alfred does fuck him over at every turn, and he has been doing this forever. But also, like, no one has seen him. You know what I mean? And it's just weird that, like,
you're just kind of thinking, like, so who's he been fighting? Like, if this is his first, like, iconic villain,
right?
And it also is the origin point. It also argues it's like, well, shouldn't you be done, dude? Like,
yeah,
you avenged your parents' death. It's over, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you have any reason to keep doing that?
Exactly. Oh, they're gonna put. Oh, I love the end of.
Do you want to take 8 years off? Do you want to take 8 years off, bro?
Oh, they gave us he gave us a signal. Okay, that's nice, but there's that's what I was gonna say. There's never any inference in any of the '90s output that, like, if found out, he will be arrested for vigilantism and taken to jail and prosecuted with the full extent of the law.
Right.
Right as in, like, Batman Begins, Michael Caine makes a joke about, like, he says, like, I'm going to tell him it was all your idea or whatever.
Right.
Whatever, when it's all said and done. And all of those operate from the idea of, like, from Batman Begins on, it's, can we trust this guy? He's a vigilante. He's making us look bad at our jobs, whatever, but can we do this? Whereas everything else is just like, well, we're just so happy he's here. There's just so much crime we can't. You think we could deal with all of it?
Especially when you get into the Schumacher ones, it is way more in the vein of the '66 Batman ones, where it's just like he's just hanging out with the public, like he's just in costume. Which again,
I forget they go to a fucking dating auction in in Batman and Robin.
I remember people saying, like, in regards to the Batman, they're like, it was kind of weird seeing, like, him in crime scenes, just like walking around with, like, other cops, just like,
because you only get that in the bank scene in The Dark Knight.
Well, I'm like, I'm like, you see that on a comic book page like all the time. You don't think twice about it. Right. But it's like, yeah, in the real world, it's awkward. And it's like, and what I love about the Batman is it acknowledges that it's awkward as fuck. There's so many like weird silences and just like glances exchanged between him and the cops. Like when he first enters that first Riddler's crime scene, and the one guy's just like, boss, we really letting this guy in here? Like this freak in here or whatever? And Pattinson doesn't say a fucking word to this dude. But again, it's part of the design of the cowl and everything. He just gives him this fucking look like, really? Like, you want to get my shit right now? Like, and he doesn't have to say anything. It's incredible, dude.
Yeah. How about I cut that fucking policeman's fund? How about I quit donating to shit? Right. And that's the one thing I did love is that we do with Batman Begins, we get an origin of both Batman and Bruce Wayne.
But again, he seems fully formed as this version of Bruce Wayne very quickly. Yes. Part of that is the Bruce Wayne montage, but that I was going to say that's the thing I look forward to in the Reeves version.
That's what I want.
Is him beginning to negotiate, and I think you see the seeds of that sown in the Batman, of him trying to figure out when is the best time to be Batman and when is the best time to be Bruce Wayne. What gets me further in whatever given situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's going to eventually realize, I got to play both angles of this, and him figuring out maybe the pitfalls of some of that, I think could be a very interesting outing for two, because we've never seen that. We've never seen an origin story for Bruce Wayne, not Batman. And that would be such an interesting reversal of like, we're not going to show the origin for Batman in this incarnation, but we are going to show you the persona of Bruce Wayne that he's creating, and this is how he goes about it.
See, I like it. I like the idea of like cool. This whole fun thing gets found out, spoiler alert, whatever, in the Batman. So who can come in and like kind of supplement that and revamp that and make it an actual thing that's regulated so that it's not just a huge money pit for the mob? Mr. Bruce Wayne. So he gets his name out there more. I would love it if the first hour of the next one is him in Batman outfits for like 10 minutes, and it's just little bits of him at night, and like maybe he's taking down a petty criminal and sees an advertisement for like himself on the TV and like the the storefront, and they both kind of have a moment of like, this fucking guy, like Bruce Wayne, look at this. And so he can have that release of like, I fucking hate doing this. I don't really want to be Bruce Wayne. I want to be the Batman. So I can let that out of like me and this lowlife both are like, this fucking dude, Bruce Wayne, like who is he? Like, just to deal with that and to be building that up more. I think that would be the way you go about it.
Also, you gotta, this is just me daydreaming while we're just playing around. To me, obvious, interesting route to take. I don't know if you want to do it right off the bat. You gotta bring in another love interest, so that when Catwoman returns in 3 and the Joker and the Riddler are on the loose, there's also the tension of, hey, I thought we had something. Who's this Andrea Beaumont?
Oh, yeah.
You got hanging around with you. And then that sets up 4, where we do live action Mask of the Phantasm and we get your origin story that you wanted, with him going out on his first night and the only woman who almost made him stop being Batman. Because Catwoman's never going to make him stop.
No.
So we get to tell that story finally on screen.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Do we, now here's the thing. Do we bring back Vicky Vale at all?
Why?
Well, here's the thing. We've talked about Telltale, but in Telltale, Vicky Vale is a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
And she just so happens to be, spoiler for the video game you probably never played, she happens to be the leader of the Children of Arkham. This group
I know.
Yeah, the group of people who were like, fed up the Waynes weren't who you thought they were, which I loved that it pulled from some of the stuff that isn't movie lore. It pulls a lot of like, some of that has to be from the recent Telltale games and comic books and all that. So I love that angle of like, well, maybe these people aren't who you think they are. That gets pulled in there.
Right.
And I don't know why, but I don't remember fucking Totoro being advertised at all for this in anything I ever saw.
They only really started showing him in, started showing him in promos like right before the movie was coming out. There was the scene of him being escorted out of his own club where he's like, you really think you're going to scare me with that cape and cowl or whatever? Something like that. I thought everybody was great. I mean, we can do a more in-depth
Yeah, no, we could do
review.
more in-depth.
I am curious what you thought of Colin Farrell, though.
I'll tell you this. When we got done watching it, I was like, "What'd you think of Colin Farrell?" And she was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, that was Colin Farrell." No, I was like, "The Penguin was Colin Farrell." Really? Yeah. I thought he looked. Yeah, you thought he was just. Yeah, no, I love that. That's one that I like. Like, do we see him in handcuffs? He's not. He's free to go. He doesn't get like taken down.
Oh no, he's in the final montage of like things are going to get bad before they get,
right.
Going to get a lot worse before they get better. There's going to be a power vacuum, blah blah blah, and you see him looking over the city. And of course, I don't know if you've read this or not, but he's getting his own HBO spinoff series.
Good.
Colin Farrell as the Penguin for a little.
And here's what I like.
8 to 10 episode miniseries.
I like that. You have to have another guy on the other side of things that's doing good, and it's a Harvey Dent DA, but he's got ties to the Penguin. It's like the Penguin is the one fronting him, and when Batman figures his secret out, he gives him the chance of like, I know you're not dirty. You haven't, your hands aren't bloody, but the guy who's putting you on definitely is. What are you going to do about it? And Dent taking a stand against violence and all that, then the Penguin has to say, okay, well, I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to maim you and make sure that nobody knows they ever need to cross me again. And somehow the Penguin is responsible for creating Two-Face. That would be dope. And that happens in the second one.
I'm sorry, we've been all over the place.
Yeah.
And we'll wrap up soon, I promise. But you mentioned you definitely don't want a sidekick of any kind. And I agree with you to a certain extent that I don't want one right away, because I want more time with just chilling with this version of the character and letting him evolve a little bit more. But I do think it's kind of the final frontier that nobody's been able to nail in live action, is to truly do a Robin origin story of him taking a kid under his wing. And then, I mean, it's not like I expect Robert Pattinson to be making, 7 or 8 of these, but it's like, I love this incarnation of the character so much. I'm like, this is the kind of thing where I'm like, you could do the Jason Todd arc and eventually build to Red Hood. You could do, Dick Grayson becoming Nightwing. You could start with a kid younger and build him up. You could do Carrie Kelly from Dark Knight. You could fuck around with it and bring in a female Robin, or
I think
any number of things. But I think
I'll give you this.
Whoever finally nails that in the same way that I'm like, we're getting so many things I've always wanted to see from the character on the big screen. That kind of, to me, is the last thing. If somebody could do it right, that is such a huge part of the character that kind of gets left by the wayside outside of the comic books and the animated series, because I think people have a weird time navigating it. But I think people got scared off by the Schumacher movies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we just need to do it again, because Rise is like pussyfooting around it. Just really, if at the end of the day, it just felt like such a tease.
Right.
Especially because I love JGL so much. I was like, get him to that point earlier. And I get that, like, no, what it was really setting up was he's going to be the next Batman. He's going to take over that mantle. It's not, you're going to be my sidekick, you know? So I do think there's room to do that. And I think Reeves could make it work in his universe.
I think if you start
another little orphan kid, man.
No. One of the things that like Bruce Wayne to like boost the public image, besides like refunding like this fund thing for people and like getting it on the straight and narrow, is that he's gonna start putting more money into the arts and stuff like that. And one of the things he loved as a kid, one of the things that he was with his parents at before they died, was the circus. So he funds that to come in town and make a big spectacle of it. And for whatever reason, what happens to the Graysons happens. Not Two-Face does it, not whatever. It's truly like the mob's still around, so it's
right.
you
can be connected to Penguin.
The promoter, the Penguin is the one that's putting it on, and in public, Bruce Wayne is like, he's a businessman, he's going to help us, we're going to do this, but in private, he's building a case of like, fuck this guy. And because whoever comes in with the circus maybe still owes Oswald some money, maybe a certain wire gets cut, and bam, what happens to the Graysons happens. And so you have that at the beginning, and you have bits and pieces of him doing what he can to try and help Dick Grayson along, and the movie will end with him eventually like, okay, I am Bruce Wayne now. I figured that part of myself out, and I'm doing this thing with Batman, but like, I don't know how much longer I could do this by myself. I'm getting my ass kicked out here. So it ends with like a teenage, not a little boy, but not a grown man, a teenaged 15, 16-year-old, whatever, Dick Grayson finally deciding, all right, I'll take this billionaire dude up on his offer, and I'll come and live with him. And it just ends with him showing up at the house.
Here's the thing, and I feel kind of bummed that he's already cast as a different role, but by perfect casting for like kid that he takes under his wing with him would be Barry Keoghan, who's playing the Joker already. Yeah. But I'm like, I can see, dude, these two like youngish dudes living in this giant mansion together, just like going out and like kicking ass at night. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, I think there's a way to do it and make the Robin character totally work.
Yeah, because that was my one problem with Forever, was that it had that crux of like, oh, well, if you'd have just been there, if you'd have shown up,
right,
my family wouldn't be dead. And he's like, if Bruce Wayne could have saved your parents, he would have. That's the thing I can appreciate about like the Titan show and other iterations is Robin becoming Robin is nothing to do with Bruce Wayne.
Right.
And it's him physically, tangibly getting a chance to like make sure that what happened to him doesn't happen to anybody. Not by pummeling somebody, not by throwing him in jail, but like using the one thing his parents left him. You save one child, you can save them all. Uh-huh. That kind of thing. And, that aspect of it, I think there's a lot there you can mine, especially if you set it up subtly. It's not a huge thing. It's something that happens. You have beats with him as Bruce Wayne signing checks, making sure things are going to take care of this kid. Maybe he meets him and apologizes for what happened. He's like, I just wanted to bring the circus to town. I don't know what happened. When the investigation's over with and they see what happens, if there's any malfeasance or whatever, I'll bring whoever it is to justice. I'm so sorry. Bits in there. And finally the end is, okay, well, how about you come and stay with me just for a little bit to see if you like it. But that's because as Bruce Wayne, he's gotten to see what this sidekick is into and can do.
Yeah.
Like, he is physically fit. He is acrobatic. He does have a little bit of like a hothead streak, and so go with me here. Through learning from him, Bruce Wayne gains a partner. Batman gains a partner to fight crime at night, but Bruce Wayne learns how to be like Bruce Wayne, like cool Bruce Wayne that fucking loves cars and like is like kind of fast and loose with women and has this arrogance. He learns that by like getting to see the childhood he didn't get to have, because even though that's kind of happening with Robin, quote unquote, here, Bruce Wayne's interceding to make sure that it's not so terrible. So the kid is sad his parents are gone, but he's still like checking out girls, loves hot rod, like loves cars, loves, action, getting into trouble, whatever. And like, there's a mutual bond there. I don't know who the hell you get to play the kid. And I hope that nobody involved with the production hears this and then steals our idea. So we'll copyright that now.
Again, I don't know if I want it from the next one, but maybe the next one.
No, you sow the seeds now.
Yeah.
And then like you beat on it later. Because imagine Catwoman comes back and is like, wait, you got this fucking kid living with you? Like, what the hell?
Or you just have a Robin out there kicking ass who has his own origin story and has already been through all of this, and they just bump into each other one night because they're going after the same person. And it's like, hey, who the fuck are you? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or it's year 3 now, and he's like, yeah, I was inspired by you when we first started hearing about it. After I saw how you saved the city in the wake of the flood and everything, I decided, like, I want to be like you. So I started going out at night, and, he just stumbles across him.
Were your parents? Oh, they died in the flood. Oh, okay.
You could rewrite it that way. You don't have to
fine.
go with the straight up the acrobatic origin. It's always been a nice part of
You
his.
can even skip that. You can go to fucking Jason Todd breaking into his shit.
Yeah.
Like, just do that. Start from there. Why not? That'd be better.
Or you could just scratch both of them and bring in my favorite, Mr. Tim Drake.
Oh yeah,
Red Robin.
Yeah.
Yes. Still my favorite. He's the most chill, the least angsty. Because Dick, of course, I love from the animated series, but then when he becomes Nightwing, he's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the time. But I like their back and forth between each other. Jason Todd just sucks in general. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I was trying to think, Tim Drake, I was like, do we get to... Yeah, Tim Drake
Drake's the
does
most
show
chill.
up. He does show up in Titans. Like, if you want to skip and just watch the 3rd season, that's all. You got Deathstroke in there, and it's what's his face?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Richie Valens' brother. That guy. He's also in Ozark.
Oh, okay.
He's
Richie!
He's Deathstroke in the Titan show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not Joe Manganiello?
No, but you know where Joe Manganiello shows up, Noah?
Where?
He plays a cop in the ER. Just FYI.
All right. Is that where we want to leave it? Do we have
can.
any final thoughts on... This was kind of a short 2x2.
Do you want to rank them now?
The whole franchise?
No, just the
Batmans
three.
themselves?
The 3 we watched. What would you recommend people go see first, and then what should they check out and check out later? Like, where do you?
I mean, everybody's already seen all of these, I'm sure.
You're a 12-year-old kid. You've never seen any other Batman movie. The Batman's about to come out on HBO Max, but you realize, wait a minute, there's other Batman titles.
Right.
What are you having them watch before they watch the Batman?
That's an interesting question, because it's like, yeah, do I love the Batman so much because
it's new,
and because of what it does and doesn't do similar to those other ones, and like if you don't have the comparison, does it play the same? I don't know. I guess there's the question of like, is this iteration of Batman a little bit of a tough sell if it's your first time out, which I think has been an interesting thing to see with all of the marketing around it.
Right.
Because it's just like, it's a slow, brooding 3-hour mystery crime drama thriller. And they have commercials where it's like, chase down the penguin and bad action and blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
I love the toy. The day after I saw it, I had to go look at the toys in Target. I was like, oh, fuck yeah, man.
I really, like, I'm looking for one that has, like, the right kind of articulation and everything. But I do want a Pattinson Batman. I really want one. I think he looks so cool.
Agreed.
I'm just, putting that out there. Birthday's in October. You don't have to get me the $125 like master version that they have from McFarlane Toys. You don't have to do that.
Okay.
But
if I can find you a Batman suit, would you like that? I'm big into clothes.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yes. If you could find me this exact outfit, that would be great.
I'm gonna get you the one he wears to the funeral.
Sure.
The suit.
Well, no, I was
The
gonna
Bruce
say,
Wayne suit.
get me the big puffy, the thing that he wears when he has the armor underneath it. When he, like I said, when he looks like he's in good time. Like, yeah, the big puffer jacket. Let me get that, and the eyeshadow.
That was my favorite. Just watch it, like the one scene where they're shooting at him, and it's just flying off of him, because there's not a lot of that in any other movies. To this point, like the whole body armor thing in the first one, he's like, he's wearing body armor, like that thing. I do just want to. I do love Michael Keaton. You want to get nuts, Jack? Let's get nuts. Like that takes the cake. So, yeah, definitely. I say just go in chronological order. See where you started. See where you restarted.
Here's the thing. I think they all have merit.
Oh yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah,
I don't think there is even Batman and Robin, which I think will inarguably be the bottom of the barrel for most people. I think is one of the best worst movies ever made. It's so entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think they all have merit. I think for me and what I like in the character, like I said, this is my favorite live action version of him thus far. I love the aesthetic of this Gotham. I love the supporting cast. I love this take on Batman. I love the fact that everything's a little more lo-fi, and it's like it somehow is even more grounded than the Nolan version.
Yeah, especially with the wingsuit that like fucks up, because it's like, yeah, you're not gonna be able to just.
And I like this movie. Like, it does have a sense of humor as well. Like, the moments are not as often as maybe, again, I said surprisingly going back to the Nolan one, I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot more like just, moments for the theater to be like, ha ha, which you don't get like that kind of shit as much in the Batman, but the little tiny bits, and it's a lot of like the Gordon interaction, and then like bits with the Penguin where he's waddling at the end, world's greatest detective. You don't know about your Spanish. You gotta brush up on your Spanish. Shit like that. Like, yeah.
When they left him there, and he's just like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Yeah, and he's waddling off. Yeah, he's cuffed together. Great shit. That car chase, man. My God.
Oh yeah.
Another one going back to the Tumbler in Batman Begins, kind of whatever, and then when you get to Dark Knight, you're like, oh, it's the coolest fucking thing ever. Yeah. When it becomes the Batpod. Still that was one of the wildest moments ever in a theater.
Oh, God, yeah.
Well, that whole sequence, but particularly that moment, I remember when you're just like, oh, damn, dude, the thing's wrecked. Like, okay, cut. We'll have another set piece. Like, you'll have to track him down later or whatever. And it's like, nope.
Still in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great stuff. But yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I know a lot of people thought maybe it was a little hyperbolic, and I did want to go watch it again immediately afterwards, but I was so over the moon for it the first time. But after a second time, and I cannot wait for it to be on HBO. I think it's April 19th or something like that.
Yeah.
So coming up just a couple weeks away.
I said we watch that again, and then we try to get
we'll try and get the brothers on here to do a full deep dive. So yeah, this was a more truncated 2x2.
Yeah.
For this month, but a lot of Bat content.
Yeah.
So we figured we'd throw our 2 cents in. Hope you enjoyed it. Do we have picks for next time? Do we want to float a theme and reconvene? What do you think?
Well, I know we just did them, but do we want to honor a great and do a Bruce Willis theme one? Like, I know we just did time travel sci-fi with Lupa, but like, do we want to do one for him or no?
What is aphasia?
Yeah, aphasia.
What is it?
Cognitive. Like you can't remember, you can't communicate. You're slowly going to start to be able to like just not be aware. It's not full on dementia. It's not full on like Alzheimer's. It's just you cognitive. It's not that you lose your memories. It's just you lose the ability to cognitively correlate.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's too soon. Maybe like we wait and we save that for like, I don't know. But it's just, I read the article Mom sent. I was like, damn, man,
that does suck.
That's rough.
Yeah, especially when we were talking trash about him the other night at dinner. Man, where we were like, he just does all these movies, just fucking paycheck actor. He'll do anything for $1 million. It's like, well.
He was aware enough to know that maybe that was coming down the pike, so good on him.
Yeah. I would be down for a Willis tribute.
But it can't be anyone we've talked about.
But we did just so he's been featured on here in Looper and Color of Night. Have we done any other Willis movies?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
So do we want to do like deep pulls, like ones nobody would think of?
I mean, I don't know how deep you're talking about. I had one that jumped to mind.
What's that?
12 Monkeys, just because I haven't seen it in forever.
Yeah, I was thinking like, not 12. What's the other one? Last Man Standing?
The Western? Is that a Walter Hill movie?
Yeah. It's like a 20s, 30s Western.
Christopher Walken?
And Michael Imperioli, I think.
I've never seen it.
You never have?
No.
Oh yeah, it's one of those. You could argue that it's like Good and Bad and the Ugly or like Fistful of Dollars, but like in a modern setting in the 20s.
Okay.
You know.
All right.
I haven't seen it in years.
I've never seen it, so perfect
yeah, let's do
candidate.
that. All right. So Last Man Standing and
12 Monkeys.
12
But you're not
Monkeys.
allowed to talk about Lajete for like a half hour on the episode, okay?
I won't.
Get it
I won't
out of
say
your
a word.
system. All right.
I was even gonna say that at Last Boy Scout, but
Last Boy Scout is on HBO Max right now. But it's also literally within the last month it has been covered by The Rewatchables, which is on the Ringer Network, and they just did it on We Hate Movies.
and that's a Tony Scott joint, isn't it?
It is.
We'll save that for
need
the Great Scots. Whenever we get that one off the ground.
We do need to do Great Scots.
Yeah,
eventually.
we'll get that off the ground.
Yes. Okay.
Speaking of that, Raised by Wolves, dope, right? Like
Season 2?
yeah.
Yeah.
Did we
Are
talk
talking about
about-
TV now?
Did we talk about this already on camera on mic?
No, I mean I have a laundry list of what I've
Okay.
been watching and other stuff.
No. I text you and I was like, I went back and looked at like what was going on with that and like Mithras, the cult of Mithras and all that, and like what they found in ancient Rome, and that just made me appreciate more of the myth that you get, because their arguments like, well, what if it wasn't Christianity? It was Mithras, like what was going to be Christianity before Christianity showed up on the planet. It was more than likely going to be the cult of Mithras that we're talking about now. What if that was the thing that everybody threw their religion into? Christianity was just one of these other crackpot theory things. So I like that is where they based all of their backstory and lore on, the because Saul does get co-opted into the cult of Mithras, and you have that versus complete atheism, like
Yeah, it for a little bit I thought we were getting into like Westworld season 2 and 3
I know,
territories for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good thing. But then it really turned a corner in the back half of the season, particularly around like episode 5.
Yeah.
Basically when was it Ren, the daughter android?
No, fuck no, dude.
Yeah,
That's, ugh.
but no, the episode where she like comes back
Yes.
after they have cut her face off and everything, and she basically just like goes hog wild on all of Mithraic. That is when I was like, oh, I'm back in. And then the back half of that season is just batshit thing after batshit thing, and it did finally start to get back. It has those moments in it where I'm just like, no other show is getting to like this theme or this concept or this like existential crisis type thought or some like new type of perception I haven't thought of before. And it's like sometimes there's some goofy wonky shit around it, but like it's just doing shit that no other show is
because
even
it
attempting
has the
to
money
right
to
now.
and it wants to. Like I love it.
I also felt like the budget was a little like what happened here in a few episodes, but then again by the back half of the season I'm like
There's where the money went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, huge recommend for that. I already mentioned to you earlier, but Severance, if you're looking for a new
I definitely
sci-fi
wanna check that
themed
one
show, one of my new favorites. Very, very good. And of course, we got Atlanta back, so I'm sure we definitely need to do a.
Let's do a TV catch up.
We need to do a TV catch up soon because,
You know
to be
what? How
quite
about this?
honest,
How about
like
this?
not really much going on the movie front right now.
Well, how about this? How about when we come to because we're gonna start working on our new Summers in the ER show.
Yes.
Let's use that as a we'll catch up with TV before we get into that episode thing.
For sure.
That seems like a perfect way to get in there.
All right.
So do you want to do the outro in your best Batman voice? Or you don't think you can
Which Batman voice are we doing?
I don't know. Whichever one you want.
Okay.
Can
I'm
you
sorry.
do that? Can you
One
do
of my
it?
favorite.
That's the question.
Oh, I don't know if I can, but I just wanted to throw out a few while we're at it. But one of my favorite deliveries from the Batman, and it's like when I need to go and find the Pattinson version or where it's different from Christian Bale. It's when they're like, "You don't want to get blood on that suit, do you?" Mine or yours? That shit. I was just like, but it's just like, mine or yours? Like, he's such a prick when he does it. It's so funny to me. But yeah. He just goes light with her. You got a lot of cats. Yeah. That's maybe a little too soft. You got a lot of cats.
Yeah, that's
Just,
so
it's so just chill and matter of fact. I'm like, dude, you hit the right perfect note of it. And when he has to get animated, he can do it. But, yeah. You won't be remembered.
Yeah.
You're crazy.
Yes.
It's so good, man. I loved it. But, yeah, oh, my God. There was a bail delivery that had me dying earlier today. I watched Batman Begins earlier today. I'm trying to remember. Gavin, they opened their podcast apps. They read the episode description. They chose to download it. They knew what they were getting themselves in for. I say,
let them listen.